Thanks very much, Susan, for that introduction, which I wrote. That's, uh, yeah, yeah. So it's really great to be here. Back in 2009, when I was the program director for the IBM Ottawa Center for Advanced Studies, my team and I realized that things had changed. We were doing research that was making its way into IBM products together with universities, and we saw that the real opportunity wasn't so much that as to take IBM technologies that were emerging and help enterprises of all sizes, particularly small and medium enterprises as well, to take that technology and apply it. And that was more of a proof of concept, client-connected research. And that began to dominate our thinking. And by moving in that direction, we've been very, very successful. And one of the things that came out of that in 2010 was the Center for Business Analytics and Performance at the University of Ottawa. And many of you at this conference know that they co-sponsored last year. And we've had 5 years of success connecting to small and medium enterprises and also local government through that center. Now, what I want to talk about today is to kind of rehash very briefly almost everything that we've talked about. It's very ambitious because I put these slides together mostly before we talked about anything. So, but also to lead us towards not me talking, but a discussion where we can all talk about how we take what we know and what needs to happen and work on it collectively, not collectively but individually, as many of us have already been doing, but truly collaboratively and connected. And I know that all of you sitting here have ideas and things that you know about that most people don't know about yet that could be better connected together, and we have ways of exploring that. So I'll jump right in. So I want to briefly talk about the overall context. Other people have covered this, but I'll do it really quickly. What is really IBM's motivation in engaging in this space, so I can be very clear about that, and then talk a bit about the approach that we've seen that works based on all of our many successes and some of the challenges that we faced in those. And then we'll move directly into discussion. So the opportunities. So these are no surprise. In the education space as a whole, demand is outstripping supply, particularly in growth markets. There's a misalignment. People are being trained for jobs that don't exist, and jobs that exist don't have anyone being prepared for them. There's many of these inefficiencies in the system that people are growing more and more impatient with, especially when they don't have a job. That makes them very impatient. And also, there's huge data sets being generated by education itself that are largely, to this point, still unexploited. And this means this is a great opportunity in the education space for us to eat our own cooking, which, either you become a good cook or you order out a lot. IBM can help either way. So just quickly touching on the first two, you can see that in places like China and India, the number of eligible, potentially higher ed people who are actually going into being educated is increasing dramatically. What was 26% or so in China in 2010 looks like it's going to be 40% in 2020. And that means also, as many of you know in your own institutions, we see many people from China coming to visit our institutions and learn there, both because of the status that it confers and also because of the amazing life opportunities they get by studying outside of China. So that number is actually, the 2011 number there is growing at about 30% a year. So it's an amazing thing. And I mean, we will just touch on India there, but imagine they need 50,000 more colleges in India. So, if you could buy stock in colleges, then, there you go. As well, there's a big misalignment around the world. In Egypt, there's 1.5 million unemployed graduates and 600,000 jobs that require someone. In South Africa, 3 million people who are not currently being educated and not currently employed, and yet 600,000 graduates without jobs and 800,000 jobs without graduates. In India, focused more on just how much effort is being expended by companies to train people. We're not going to lament that as if this is an awful thing, because I think companies have to invest in their workforce. And as we all know, there's things that you can only learn in a company. But it's more about saying we have strong incentives in industry to participate more closely with universities and colleges in providing the training that our employees need. Now, the other tragedy is, I think, if there is no relevance to your employment potential after graduation, and you don't see a connection there, you see what's happening in the US, where $320 billion is lost every year because people choose not to continue their education. And that's a significant loss. So, why does IBM care? Well, we have all these wonderful technologies that have come together in a confluence of potential that, you know, if you want to hype it, you could say it's never been seen before and allows us to do things that we couldn't imagine, et cetera. But really, although it's applicable everywhere, our challenge is that IBM is not a consumer products company. So we don't want consumers who buy our stuff. We need people who can take what we have and get more value out of it for themselves and for other people. And that really is the definition of entrepreneurship. And it's no surprise that that's really a major focus for colleges and universities. It's also a major focus for us. And even better, the kinds of technologies that we have are technologies that go beyond just helping someone to become slightly more efficient or slightly more profitable. They really have the potential to change the world in very positive ways if that's being done by people who have the passion and the enlightenment and the knowledge to really drive that. So we're really looking at social entrepreneurship and that creation of value. And that's where I think we're very, very strongly aligned with the goals that higher education institutions have set for themselves in contributing, again, to the growth of innovation in regions and the creating a better community and society. So, what is our approach? Well, borrowing from Donald Stokes, who his book, Pasteur's Quadrant, really focuses on the notion of a continuum between basic and applied science is somewhat naive. And he points out that, sure, you have people who were very much fundamental science people like Bohr pursuing knowledge of the atom, and then you have very much applied people like Edison who really didn't worry too much about the science behind the materials he was using, but just tried stuff. And eventually things worked for him. But then you have anomalies like Pasteur, who, although he was very interested in fermentation and the spoilage of dairy products, he also pursued a fundamental understanding of the germ theory of disease. And so you can't really put him on the fundamental side and leave out the applied or otherwise. So it's about bending that axis as has been done here. And of course there's the empty square. I'll show you what we'll put in that. We have got to fill it with something. So fill it with students, you see? Fill it with clients. But really that's what it's about. It's about taking the fundamental understanding that we express in our research that then informs our teaching, and also the hands-on exercises and the practice that comes through from exploring questions of use. And then this is also how we kind of look at how universities and also community colleges working on those two dimensions work together. And we move from lack of knowledge or lack of solution in the base quadrant up into a demonstration, a research demonstration or a proof of concept or what have you that shows someone this is how you take the fundamental understanding and the practical questions and do something very useful with them. Now, IBM has two things that we're working on together with you to help address this. One of them is what we call a knowledge exchange. And this is a global community expressed through an IBM Connections community, which is an online manifestation of, you know, brotherly, sisterly love and stuff like that, where we could all work together. And what are we really working on? Well, we want to get between the tools and training stuff because we have lots of excellent marketing materials and courses that teach you specific products and offerings and things like that. But of course, what you want to do is teach theoretical concepts in a way that, you know, is much more meaningful and structured and gives people real capabilities. So these two things kind of meet in the middle where when you're going to teach a theoretical concept, then it's always great to have a practical way of expressing that. And so that's what we'd like to work together on the knowledge exchange on, which is taking IBM materials and materials of others and organizing them in such a way that you can take advantage of them in courses, and not like the current model, which is we say, here it is, do that, and everyone goes and does it their own way, but that we work on it together, and that through that kind of open sharing, we could build up much more effective materials and be able to use them together. Now, the other part of it is what Susan was talking about, which is the Collaborative Innovation Center. And that's much more a connection that finds clients and guides them to solutions that involve both fundamental questions and also applied questions. And it's important to note, as Dr. McGuffey mentioned yesterday, that all these solutions are really about transdisciplinary things, where you can't really solve the problem in only one discipline, but you need to come at it from a very broad approach. So, for example, Blood Services Organization in Canada wanted to look at how they were going to increase the number of blood donors. And that was very much a question of, okay, well, what technology and what kind of mobile and social and analytics solutions can you use? But it also required a fundamental understanding and exploration of human motivation and concepts like activism and slacktivism, et cetera. And so there was a big social research component to it as well. And I think that illustrates, where the real successes are in this model. It's when not only do you have a collaborative innovation center, but you have a breadth of faculty from across the institution coming together and saying, look, these are really interesting challenges people have. And there's these fundamental technologies like analytics or cloud or mobile or social secure technologies as well that can address those problems. But no one really knows how to do that yet, because the questions that lie in the domains where we're trying to apply it haven't been answered. So you end up with a model that says, let's invite clients to come into the center and come with questions that are legitimate, complex research questions that we can develop together, and then get to a point where the client will agree. If you can answer these questions, I'm interested in taking this into an implementation. I'm interested in going further. And an example of how that really plays out to the benefit of everyone, and I'll just end with this, happened with the Ottawa Healthcare Organization that's focused on pediatrics. And in their ER, they wanted to measure pediatric physician performance. And so we have fantastic tools for dashboarding and tracking all these stats, but the question is, how could they do that in a way that would be actionable, that would be fair, it would be comprehensive, and it would be useful? And those questions were really questions in medicine. And so the researchers at the University of Ottawa looked at prior research into the performance of surgical care teams. They used a mathematical technique called Most Efficient Frontier. They worked through what they called clinically homogeneous groups, like people presenting with the same symptoms. So is it respiratory? Is it nonspecific fever? Is it head injury? What is it that these groups are? And they then followed 22 physicians and about 15,000 patient visits, and accumulated a lot of data and did a lot of analysis on this. And that led to really high quality publications, but it also helped the physicians to decide that this was a legitimate scientific-based solution that they could implement. So it made the business case, it supported it, and it also helped make something much better than a vendor could have contemplated, and it brought all the resources and the creativity of students and professors and researchers, both inside IBM, within the client, at the universities, to solve this problem. And the result was you had students who had worked on this, who were grad students, but they basically had a guaranteed job because they knew the client's business, they knew how it worked, they knew how the technology the client wanted to use worked. There was nobody else in the world that would be a better choice as a hire. And from the client's perspective, they got to try the student talent before they could buy. They knew that if they invested in the solution, they knew exactly where the talent would come from, and they were at the head of the line as far as recruiting. Because one of the challenges you have is there's very few people who have these skills. But if you've met with them and worked with them for months, and they've worked with your team inside your organization, they're going to say yes when you offer them a job, especially if it directly follows on from their studies in university. They just really can't say no. So it's a perfect way of ensuring that the people that we create, the talent that we create, goes to the people that invested in it. And that's where it should go. And that will drive further investment. So I'd like to end there and ask you to think about now and perhaps talk about, if you're not afraid, what we could do together and perhaps how we could do that, particularly around what we can put in place from a curriculum perspective that we could all share, that would be offered in an open way. And that, I think, would be extremely powerful. So I will leave you with this, which I think you could, print out, cut out, and fold into a tetrahedron and get that better grasp that really every side touches every side. But intentionally, we focused on these proof of concept projects because this is where the researchers and the students get the experience with the actual challenges, and the clients see this is a legitimate solution or not. And that's where the data comes for the publications. And the elements that stretch across, like taking both the applied and the basic approach to focus also on skills to do the applied stuff, but also skills to do the innovation and the creation of new knowledge. All of that is necessary to achieve things. Many approaches that we see advocated are ones that focus on only one of those elements. And again, it's the transdisciplinary nature of these things and the comprehensiveness that has made them very effective and will continue to make them, I believe, one of the most effective models out there for connecting skills and research and continuing education and everything else into solving the problems that matter in the world. So thank you very much.